Hey there, and welcome to another Girl by Moonlight development stream. Um, Today, I am going to be working on a new series playbook. Because I want to get like 2 or 3 of these sorted out. Right now, I only have the one. I feel like that will be a good foundation. And essentially, these series playbooks are to help provide like tone and situation, as well as I think they're really an important element of like the genre period that we want to draw on. And so whereas the previous playbook that I've been developing, which is kind of like the default one, Starlit Kingdom, this playbook is the very like early genre stuff. It references a lot of the more kind of core like genre defining pieces like Sailor Moon, and has a much lighter tone, which is all well and good and lovely. What I want to start working on for this one is a kind of like late genre revisionist, very dark series book. And so this one is drawing on a lot of inspiration specifically from Madoka, because I really like the idea of the kind of like heavily subversive take on the genre. One where, all of our power is kind of poisoned by this unknown cost, and that there's like a very alien kind of process going on that we were exposed to. And also, like, where the early genre pieces are kind of like optimistically feminist, stuff like Madoka is kind of like there's like a deeply bitter feminist vibe to it. And like, I'm gonna be spoiling the shit out of Madoka during this stream, so just like, if you don't want it spoiled, like, 1, you've had many years to go watch it, so you should have already, and 2, like, get out now, because I will just be analyzing that a lot and going into a lot of the like tail end of it, which, where all of the big core like secret stuff gets revealed, and all of the like tragic stuff starts to happen. So when I say kind of like, this idea of like an optimistically feminist story versus a like darkly feminist story, right, we have to think about outcomes of the struggle. This is like the struggle with a capital S. And that in stories like Sailor Moon, or more lighthearted stuff like Steven Universe, we see characters who still are struggling with oppression, but who are able to have success within that. And then in Madoka, we see a story where there is like an immense amount of oppression going on, like directed at the characters, and that they are losing. That there's this kind of like showing why the struggle is happening rather than what it looks like when the struggle is won. And so it's really, really compelling, but it's definitely also all about having like bad shit happen to the characters, and about revealing the false promises of the optimistic genre pieces, right? So like I find that a really useful touchstone for talking about genre is like westerns, right? Like the classic like spaghetti westerns versus later darker revisionist westerns. Um, and so you can have a story like see, all my favorite are the revisionist ones, so I don't know the other ones very well. But some of the like archetypal ones, like maybe the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is still too dark. But the ones with oh my god, I shouldn't bring up this example if I can't follow through on it. But like some good examples of later genre stuff, like we have. So yeah, I guess early you could say like Fistful of Dollars is pretty like optimistic overall. There's a heroic figure who comes in, and like there are a bunch of bad people, and he plays them against each other, and benefits, and ultimately at the end, bad things happen to bad people. The hero of the story succeeds in his aims, and then there's some kind of like palatable resolution at the end. Whereas if we start getting into stuff like Unforgiven or like, I feel like No Country for Old Men is still like very much a Western in a lot of ways. So these kind of like late genre pieces that are all about deconstructing the genre and tearing down the promises that it offered. And so like No Country for Old Men is the most extreme example I can think of something like this, where like the like protagonist are kind of like heroic figure who has like stolen the money from the drug dealers, like the Lone Ranger. Yeah, Alex would be a great example of like a very early Western, right? There's these just like completely naive, pure narratives about like a hero who does hero stuff and always wins. Whereas yeah, like in No Country for Old Men, we have a character who is like the seeming protagonist who then like arbitrarily dies off camera midway through the movie. Right? Like it doesn't even give us the like heroic last stand. And there's all kinds of fun parallels in that movie of like all the drug dealers in the initial scene dying off camera and then the same fate happening to the guy who steals their money. And so it's all of these stories where like you see a lot of like anti-heroes or people who are like who start out noble but get bogged down in the moral ambiguity of the real world. And so this is what we want this series playbook to aim us at. So I'm pushing for a very late genre revisionist kind of vibe, one where everything's quite a bit darker, and one where we have some mechanics around insisting on a sort of dramatic irony, tragedy and betrayal kind of angle that we want to play towards. And my thought process is as such. So if we imagine Madoka as being a game of Girl by Moonlight, we have a bunch of different characters, right? Like Madoka is a clear, unlikely hero. We have a guardian. We have an outsider. We have a time traveler. We have... Mami's probably also a guardian, to be honest. And so we have like that host of characters. And if we include Kyubey in the crew, right, then we have this other character. You could play Kyubey as a stranger. But I'm thinking we probably need like a mascot playbook to cover characters like Kyubey because they're pretty core to the genre. But anyways, that's a tale for another day. But if we think of Kyubey as being part of the crew rather than being an antagonist, right? If we draw that line in that way, then we have a really interesting character, right? Like one that is like on their team and is trying to help them accomplish their goal, but like knows a truth behind it that the others don't. And due to its alien nature is unable to really parse how what it's doing is monstrous to the people involved. And I think that's a really fascinating character to play out as a PC in a role-playing game, and to have everyone collectively within the crew know that that's what's up. So I'm going to take you all on a little tour of what I have so far for this series playbook after that very long preamble. And let's talk about whether or not this is enough, which I'm currently in the camp of no, and how we can make it be enough. How we can push this to be more than just poetry layer and actually have some mechanical impetus behind it. So, to start, we have a lot of the usual stuff. So we have the nature of the darkness, and I have a bunch of different prompts here. I'm going to read through them. And folks are welcome to chime in with comments or ideas at this point, as usual. So, the nature of the darkness. A secret alien occupation, the rotting body of some dead god, a cold and distant star, beings from outside time, parasites and sickness, an ancient curse. Its agenda: to harvest human emotions, to consume human bodies, to secretly replace us, to tear down our civilization, to poison our hearts, to drive us all to madness and despair. I'm just going to make it super big so everyone can read, no problem. Its perpetrators: an unknowable and ancient people, technicians and scientists, heroes turned to darkness, cultists and prophets, heartless outsiders. The mundane world: a dystopic society, a metropolis, poverty and hardship, wealth and affluence, a society in ruins, a pristine and sterile world, a city cut off from the world. And then I haven't changed the what is held to be sacred, what is considered profane, because I think these all still line up nicely. So we have in sacred things: money, order, power, tradition, control, possessions, edifices, organizations, and hatred. And what is considered to be profane, we have bodies, love, emotion, relationships, gender, people, nature, change, community, and friendship. So that stuff is still pretty core. If we were to be making, and let's continue with this exercise because I like this idea. If we were to be making Madoka just like straight up with this series book, which options would we choose? So like, and I've put them in there deliberately. So right, so it's like, it's kind of a secret alien occupation, I think might actually be the one I would choose. Although a cold and distant star is like an equally valid option, I think. We could also look at it as being parasites and sickness, or an ancient curse. Like these all kind of line up, but the most clear and straight up would be a secret alien occupation, right? And then their agenda is to harvest human emotions, specifically those of young girls, specifically those of young women who make a contract and become magical girls, right? That would be the Madoka framing. And this is where we get into our whole, like, the whole, like, dark feminist angle with Madoka, is that, like, the whole of human society is benefiting from this, like, alien, this, like, very secret, subtle alien uplift on the backs of young women, right? And it's about, like, the thanklessness of, and, you know, the extent to which emotional labor is taken for granted, the silencing of women's voices, all this kind of stuff. There's, like, this really sick undercurrent of all that. Its perpetrators, I would kind of go with technicians and scientists, because the incubators are basically that. But you could equally, and actually, no, you know what? For incubators, they got to be heartless outsiders, because they just don't understand human emotions, because they don't experience emotions themselves at all, and they don't understand the human perspective, because to them we are essentially a form of livestock, which they consider to be very well-treated livestock, better than we humans treat our livestock. The mundane world for Madoka, I think, is a really interesting one. I'm going to say it's a pristine and sterile world, because the setting seems really, like, strangely perfect. Everyone in the story that we see is, like, super affluent, and has like a very happy life and a life that's full of privilege. Only very late in the series do we see people who subvert that notion, like Sayaka. Sayaka? The one who's always eating and has red hair. Is that Sayaka-chan? No, I think that's someone else. Anyways, I'm forgetting the names because I'm bad. God, it's hurting me now. Sayaka is her best friend. I just need to look up the like wiki on this and just get a list of characters because I'm. Yeah, it's Kyoko. My bad. Sayaka is her friend with the blue hair. Homura is the black-haired one, and Mami is their friend who kind of indoctrinates them into the whole magical girl scene. So yeah, I would say a pristine and sterile world fits, and then if we want to continue with this, right, a metropolis. Right, we're in this massive city, this absolutely enormous city that has like a huge diversity of places to go. Because we have scenes at like docks, and there's this massive like harbor. There's like a military facility somewhere. There are all these scenes around trains. There's the ruined church. There's the hospital. There are all the like construction sites that they go to. There's the malls. There's this very diverse urban setting. Diverse in terms of its geography and construction, architecture, etc. But very monolithic culturally. So I feel like these two capture that. If we were going to what is held to be sacred, money, right? There's a lot of very capitalistic stuff, like Madoka's mom, who works super hard to support her family, and is like a businesswoman. It's a very like Japanese trope, elegantly subverted to be a little bit more feminist because there's a stay-at-home dad, but still like money is big. And like everyone having really nice houses and seemingly being really wealthy, but also the parents broadly having trouble relating to their kids and stuff like that. So like any of these are things that a capitalist, like modern capitalist society, holds sacred, in my opinion, right? We're all about violence. We're all about institutions. We're all about the things we build that aren't communities or relationships, like, right? These physical manifestations of power, order, control, right? Tradition. This is just like Western society summed up, according to me and my feelings. But and then what we consider to be profane in the setting. This one is a little more complicated in Madoka because, like, I mean, I would put love in there. Because the characters all have a lot of struggles around, like, expressing these things. And I think the other thing that it really craps on, it's like love relationships and people in general. I think even we would say people are considered, like, they're considered disposable. We have this theme that shows up later of human beings being compared to livestock. We have the darkness, like, compelling people to isolate themselves, to commit suicide, or to, like, seek out these kind of twisted venues in which they can experience these things. And so this is kind of how I would frame it for doing like a Madoka game. But I feel like there's lots of room to do it, so that for this first column, I feel like we can really nail Madoka with the prompts, which was kind of like my working goal going through all of this. And so continuing then with this idea, right? We're going to have now the price we paid. Whereas if we go to the Starlit Kingdom, right, we have a very different set of prompts, right? Rather than its perpetrators, we have this idea of like its origin, that it's some kind of like magical other thing. And we have our origin. We have different, very different options for its nature and its agenda. The mundane world is different. It's a lot less dystopic. It's still oppressive, but there's room for more kind of virtue, as we the players would see it. in the setting. It's still monsters and fucked up, and still like considers potentially like bodies or people to be profane, but whatever. Oh, and it looks like this list is a little different, actually. Let me see if I changed anything, or if it's just a sizing thing. Okay, no, it's literally just that I've sized the text box differently. Right, and so these are where we're going to have a lot of contrast, so I'm going to highlight these two areas. So we've gone through so far and made a bunch of choices. This is the bad one, Elf. Yes, indeed. And so now, rather than our origin, we have the price we paid for this power, right? So the clear Madoka one is duped into serving the darkness, right? None of the characters know that that's what they're getting into, and that the witches and magical girls are like the same thing. But power at a terrible cost could also be appropriate. The veil of reality torn aside, dark seeds blooming in our hearts, doomed heroes reborn, test subjects in dark experiments. Like, actually almost all of these count, except for the doomed heroes one. But like, dark seeds blooming in our hearts is actually what Madoka is all about, right? That the cost they pay for getting a wish granted is that they will eventually succumb to this like poisoning of themselves and this transformation that will happen. So depending on what you want to emphasize. So I'm actually going to say dark seeds blooming in our hearts is the most interesting part of Madoka. And then we have a bunch of roles. So like Madoka is the innocent hero. The best friend is Sayaka. The embittered fighter you could call I'd say Kyoko. Kyoko fits this. Hopeless victim is probably Mami. Kyoko is either embittered fighter or weary veteran. I think weary veteran has to be Homura-chan, though. Right, so these are our lovely people. We've got innocent hero, best friend, naive protector, embittered fighter, enemy turned friend, hapless dupe, weary veteran, and hopeless victim. Mami is either hapless dupe or hopeless victim. I think she is probably hapless dupe. So, somewhat academic distinction, to be honest. But if we want to do this angle where we include Kyubey in these, I'm missing a couple roles. And so that's something I want to address right now. See, this whole exercise of using Madoka and trying to build Madoka out of the series book that we've based on the show, I think is really helpful as an exercise. So like, we have enemy turned friend, which maybe we need to replace with like a spy in our midst or something like that. I don't know how exactly we're going to describe it here, but I messed with my whole drawing on the sheet thing, so I'm moving all the text around. Let me just quickly clear up this nonsense. So, hey Ketters, how you doing? Also, hi Elf, and hi Alex and Red Troubadour and John. Welcome. Fake Alex Blue, you should absolutely go watch Madoka. It is brilliant. Like, absolute top tier media. It's also only one season. There aren't that many episodes, so it's very contained. It has an absolutely brilliant arc. It's very satisfying. And it's delightfully subversive and sad and dark. And I'm spoiling the shit out of it, but whatever. So now we want to talk about having this character who is like a plant, right? We can just do an agent of darkness. Someone on the team is an agent of darkness. An unwitting traitor, I think, is another one I want to have. So here we have someone has either sold us out knowingly or unwittingly. And this will come up again later as well. And so, doop, doop, doop. So we need to have an Agent of Darkness. We have a hapless dupe. So it's, in terms of the characters, right? It's Madoka herself is the innocent hero. Her best friend is Sayaka. The embittered fighter is probably Kyoko. The hapless dupe is Mami. The weary veteran, we can say, is Homura. And then the Agent of Darkness is Kyubey, right? He doesn't necessarily... He's still working with the team, but he has this other agenda, right? And it's clear from the very beginning that there's like something going on with him, and we get to discover that through play, right? So I really like these kinds of setups. Our obligation is high school, but I have obligations are all different here. So just to give some contrast, right? In the role category of In a Starlit Kingdom, we have royal family member, loyal knight, suitor/lover, advisor, high priest, rival, forgotten child, court jester, lowly servant, enemy turned friend. All right, there is room for an enemy to turn friend, whereas here we have friend turned enemy, basically. So much darker, very different. In the obligations, we have high school, day job, temple, royal court, university, boarding school, summer camp, family, and training. Here in the obligation for this one, we have high school, day job, university, boarding school, internment camp, isolation ward, and government lab. And so some more weird stuff available. Like you could even do government lab, I picture as being kind of a like Stranger Things kind of vibe, where like our team of magical girls are like part of some weird government program or have been captured and are being experimented on. There's some kind of grossness there, which then can be really fruitful for stuff like the Enigma, where no one knows that the Enigma is that. So they've like infiltrated the facility or something, right? Like the interactions between some of these obligation tags and the kind of broader population of the game and its mechanics, there's some interesting potential there. I like that. Transcendence. I think I've eliminated a couple options in Transcendence, and I've also changed since maybe the last design stream, for those of you who haven't gotten a chance to play like newer iterations of the game. Transcendence, we now have it as choose one or two that must happen for you to transcend. So it's not just these are the two that happen, it's that there are specific things that are core and that any of them are kind of available to all the characters. And so the default one is costume changes, transformation sequences, magical jewelry, calling on ancient powers, calling on stars and planets, physical transformation, magical weapons and armor, gender change, power of the elements, and memories from past selves. Whereas here we have costume changes, transformation sequences, magical jewelry, because those are just like, I can't imagine a magical girl fiction without those. Calling on ancient powers, physical transformation, magical weapons and armor, gender change, power of the elements, memories from past selves. So I've just like cut a few out that are very Sailor Moon-esque and change things up a little bit. There's definitely room to add a couple features here. I just am not sure exactly what those would be. And then, right, transgressions. How do we transgress against that which is sacred? How do we represent that which is profane? This is unchanged. And so, Jesus, I hope you guys can't hear all these dogs just like endlessly barking next door. I feel like the things that are essential to Madoka is definitely costume changes. Like when Madoka is like thinking of being a magical girl, she makes this little notebook with drawings of herself as a magical girl, and it's all emphasis on costuming, right? About like how she will look, how she will embody that role. And for the other characters, that's how they signal their changes. They have this like different, outfit that they wear, and then magical weapons and armor, right? Every character manifests a weapon. If it's it's Mami can produce guns, and they can make these things out of nothing, and they're like manifestations of their will. Super cool. So these are things that have to happen. Some of the other characters might do some other weird shit, but whatever. Right, and so we would answer this question. In this case, for Madoka, the ways in which they transgress against that which is sacred, is that they are not interested in like conventional success, and they're being very selfless, right? There's like this. I feel like I need to add like the individual to this. Like the individual is held to be sacred, and that maybe for Madoka, I think that's actually like more correct. And there's a bunch of interesting ways that this comes up. In that like people do care about each other in the show and stuff, but I think overall there's a really big emphasis on like people succeeding and people getting what they want, right? Like they're granted wishes, which are personal. And there are things like there's that whole question about Sayaka's wish as to like what her motivations are, right? Is she really being selfless? Does she want to cure someone, or does she really want someone to be dependent on her? And there's that brilliant kind of exchange between her and Kyoko about that topic. So I like the addition of the individual to that which is held to be sacred. Because this is another shitty thing about Western culture, is that we don't really value community, we value individuals. And like arguments can be made that any of these are the same thing at some level, right? And that's not the point. The point is that one of these is going to speak to people playing the game in a particular way, and they're going to put their spin on it. So whether or not this is like a perfect, ideal like word choice, I think is not so important. Because I found myself falling into that trap of, right, like, are these unique enough? And with these kinds of exercises, it's just about, like, are they evocative enough? And will they make people think? That's most of what we're chasing here. So, and then in terms of how the characters in Madoka represent that which is profane, right, of love and of people being profane, their needs, their disposability, right? Like, the characters all refuse to accept that people should be disposable. That's like absolutely core to it. And also they save people, and that they are motivated by these very pure ideals for the most part, until they're not, until they fall and start getting twisted by the dark bad shit. But like Madoka herself, because she's so freaking moe, is just like she is this, and like Sayaka is this as well. Sayaka, with a certain layer of dramatic irony, wants to, like, desperately wants to save people, and takes on this like mantle of being a magical girl, knowing the sacrifice that it requires, so that she can save people, and because she cares about them, and as out of this effort to like do good. Some of the other characters are more cynical about it, but ultimately that's what's up. And that, you know, the climax at the end is all about the love between two characters, and this really like fucking amazing asymmetrical relationship between two of the characters. Like, I just can't stress enough how amazing the ending is. Anyways, right? This is how we represent that which is profane. And then, so now our last thing is our tragic fate. So how does it end? Why can we never win? What will ultimately be our undoing? Who will betray us knowingly or I should put this as knowingly or unknowingly. I don't know. I don't quite know how to elegantly phrase this. Knowingly or otherwise might actually be the nicest way to write that. And then it needs a question mark because it's a question. And so by contrast, if we look at this, ultimately, how does it end? What are we after? What happens when they win? What happens when we win? Versus, how does it end? Why can we never win? I feel like I'm making a pretty strong statement about this playbook right away. And then what will ultimately be our undoing? Who will betray us knowingly or otherwise? So the idea is that right out the gate, we know that this is a tragic story. We know that we will never win. And I want to have us all telegraph and buy in to like what is going to happen. What is our tragedy going to be? We don't have to get super specific about it, but in answering these questions, right, we can say this is what we're all playing towards, and we're all excited about this tragedy. Right, we can have this dramatic irony, and that we all have consensus on it, right? And because then we can all collaborate to make it happen, or to not, right? Like, this doesn't say that this is set in stone, strictly speaking, because we all know that we can't say what happens, only that we play to find out. And in Madoka, so to go back to this whole thought exercise, right, of like make Madoka out of this playbook, how does it end? Why can we never win? Right? So like we know, we the prospective players of this Madoka game have all agreed that it ends with everyone dead on Walpurgis Night, right? Because why we can never win is because that night is the like ultimate kind of summation of the tragic circumstances that we have been deceived into, because it is this like lashing out by, you know, like however many thousands or hundreds of thousands of these young women who have had their lives taken from them unfairly by this cold alien outsider throughout all of human history. So that's why we can never win, right? Because this problem is like impossibly large, and stems so far beyond the character's understanding. And so what will ultimately be our undoing, by contrast, or interestingly, is that the characters will break before that night even happens, right? Like, most of us will be dead before that even happens, and so we don't even get a chance to try to work together. Who will betray us, knowingly or otherwise? We know these answers, and it's that like most of the characters will betray us. Like, there are ways in which like Sayaka betrays her friends. There are ways in which Kyoko betrays her friends. Sayaka, out of her like unwillingness to get help and her pride, and her like twisted aspirations of heroism, Kyoko betrays everyone by having hope, which is like one of my favorite parts of this story, actually, is that because she actually like wants to believe in hope of redemption, right, both for someone else but really also for herself, there's like this selfish twist on it. She ultimately like leads people into disaster and causes her own death. Mami is so like optimistic and confident that she kind of fucks up, right? And then Homura also betrays us all by having gone cold and like refusing to open up to people. And Kyubey betrays us all because he is an incubator, and his whole purpose here is not what... By his alienness, he is never really our friend in the first place. So... Right? Like, this is like, everyone betrays us is the answer in Madoka. And that what I think is interesting about the story is that, like, this idea of like why we can never win is totally feels true in Madoka until very, very, very late in the story, like the last possible moment, and there's this like beautiful and poetic reveal thing or whatever, or this decision that Madoka makes, which is like amazing and wonderful, and it like explicitly does something that is known to be impossible. And so there's like still you can still pull hope out of these kinds of tragic stories, but it is more valuable because you have been drilling so deep into this stuff and into like this what will ultimately be our undoing stuff. And that's why that story is so compelling and satisfying, at least in my opinion. So this is what we want to build towards. Now, I'm feeling confident in our poetry layer stuff here. I feel like these prompts are pretty solid. We added a couple little bits and bobs here and there, right? This idea of like an agent of darkness and unwitting traitor to the roles. Made a couple additions that feel correct. But then we don't just want to have this be poetry, right? Poetry layer. It needs to be mechanical as well. So the tools we have in terms of our mechanisms to make this happen. We have the moves that we offer, although these are not enough strictly on their own, because the abilities that we offer can be pulled from other playbooks. So like you can run this series playbook but like never pull any moves from it. You can just only take outside influence and pull from like Starlit Kingdom and whatnot, right? I can't stop you from doing that. So this is one venue, but it's not a very hard committal to that stuff. There's the missions that we can do. You can note here, I haven't refilled it out, but I have made a cut, which is that you can no longer cleanse a person or location. We might also eliminate reclaim an object of power. These kind of redemptive missions aren't available. Right? And we want to just like push really hard with this agenda of making these tragic things happen. So framing what the missions are changes what kinds of things our characters can accomplish, and kind of sets a narrower box for us to work in, right? We can never redeem anyone. We can never, and in fact, I'm going to say this right now, we cannot reclaim an object of power either. We can fight the monsters, right? We can face a creature of darkness. We can go like sticking our noses where they don't belong. We can fight big bad stuff. And what I really want to add is like a fourth tier, this like kind of impossible tier, and change up some of the like the darkness that hunts us stuff, to push this kind of like, because there's the like loop of the investigation as it goes on, the darkness hunting us, and that, you know, eventually we will strike at the heart of darkness, which resets our heat, and buys us time. And this is kind of like, when we do this mission, this tier 3 mission, we end a season, essentially. Right, there's this idea of like there being a kind of season format built into the game. And that's all well and good, right? So we can roll from season to season, but I would love to have a fourth tier that's just like, this is where the series ends, right? This is our like Walpurgis Night from Madoka, for example. I also really should do this like so. This just makes more sense as a way of presenting this. Right, and so this is like the series end. I'm just going to give it a working title, right, of the series end. And that this will never be, by way of our mechanics, this will never be something that we're completely ready for. I think is a nice feature of it. Boop, boop, boop. Let's just even this out. So I want to have this framing matter, and then you'll also note that there's no hideout. So on the Starlit Kingdom sheet, we've got a hideout. It's designed as this kind of like long-term play feature where we can like flesh this out. voice cracking, Jesus. Where we can flesh this out over time, and that we expect to get multiple seasons out of this. What I think I want to do with this playbook, and actually I'm just having a moment of realization, right? So like with this one, when the darkness that hunts us fills up, we get a strike at the heart of darkness. We get a tier 3 mission where we immediately fail the roll for engagement, right? Or just it's like the worst possible footing. The darkness is attacking us on its own terms. I think what we want to do is say that when this fills up, when the darkness that hunts us fills up, we go to this one. It's the series end. And we're either ready for it or we're not. And so we have this tier 3 mission that buys us time, right? It resets this track. But if we can't get to that tier 3 mission before the darkness gets to us, then we're fucked. We do the series end mission for better or worse. And this thing will just be like the most gnarly possible shit. It'll be a massive challenge that the PCs should not be able to overcome, right? This is our impossible thing. This is why we can never win. Right? This needs to stand in as the reason why in some ways. And so what I want to do instead of a hideout is still make use of this idea of the little like filling the box in little like map thing. But I want to have these be like badness milestones that you like don't get a choice about filling out, or that you do get some choice around, but they're always like equal parts good and bad. So either that like every time we complete a mission we have to choose one, or that there's some big payout for it where it's like, if you take this, you get this really good thing and this really bad thing, and so it's just like culminating towards a big single bad thing at the end, right? I have it set up as bad things, very bad things, and the worst thing, which is like season-ending badness. So maybe these are a way for the MC to push. So maybe this is something that we think of as like another kind of death clock for the series, in as much as the darkness hunting us being one, right? With this whole like series end mission. But yeah, it's a pyramid of badness. Work your way up the tiers to your ultimate doom, but unlock power along the way. Always power to cost. So this is my note to myself about how this thing should work. And then also this idea that we change up some of the stress mechanics for this series playbook, of having it be that when you complete a mission, rather than, yeah, everyone clears stress, it's cool, we do like a roll based on the mission tier, and there's like a certain amount of like stress resource that you get to pull back. Similarly to how in Madoka it's like a zero-sum game where they don't always get witches, and they have to spend a certain amount of their like life force or whatever to beat the witches, and then they like hopefully get enough back, but not always. And that generally like it's a wash at best. And obviously like the game already has some like death spirals in it, just like in the vanilla game. And so to ratchet them up a bunch might be too horrendous. But I'm toying around with like where do I push? Where do I make the drama feel more like brutal and horrifying? And so this is kind of like the framework that I'm working with. And so now y'all know as much as I do about this setup. The moves I have thus far, there's like the really basic one, right, of like Each player may add +1 action rating to conceal, express, or confess. The max for these ratings increases by 1. So this is like directly equivalent to our Power of the Moon move, where we can get either defy, forgive, or empathize. And similarly, while transcended, PCs gain +1 die to conceal, express, confess. I might change up. These might actually be asymmetrical in this playbook, but I'm not too sure. I also might change the actions for the Starlit Kingdom, because I think the one that sticks out for me is defy, and I think I actually want to change this to express. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. This one is express now. This one is express. Because this is the optimistic playbook, and it shouldn't just be like, yo, you got to punch the darkness. And so here, instead of express, we're going to put it at defy. And defy. That feels a lot better. So now that we see the one series playbook in context with the other, right, we have this better sense of like, what are we indicating with these choices? And this is also part of having playtested it a bunch. People tended towards like fighting things with defy, and I really want to push people away from that, in at least in a Starlit Kingdom, right? Like, because you can fight the baddies by forgiving them. Like, fight the baddies by forgiving them. You can convince them to stop with express. You can empathize with them to understand why they're behaving the way they are and stuff like that. Right? Whereas in the like Madoka setting, that is explicitly not true in the show, and they have this moment where they're like, maybe we can do that, and it's like the answer is no, very firmly. They have to kill witches. They cannot work with them. Also, hey Arthur, nice to see you again. Yeah, because it's been a while. So I feel like this is an important change between those two playbooks. It's nice to have that figured out. And then have each PC rolls +1 when rolling Kudere and gains +1 die when investigating the darkness. So we want to push this kind of that they're more able to endure emotional, like social pressure, trauma, but less able to, as the Starlit Kingdom characters can, endure like despair and heartbreak, right? Which is what Moe is for. And that we're good at investigating, whereas the Starlit Kingdom characters are good at making friends with each other. Because in Madoka, the players spend very little time doing these kind of like social linking scenes, and it's pretty much only Madoka that does them. And she does them a bunch, and they're all great, but the other characters don't really hang out very much. Not as much as, say, in Sailor Moon or like Persona. Right, where that's like super duper core, or like Steven Universe, right, which is the other in a Starlit Kingdom kind of core referent. In Steven Universe, everyone mostly hangs out with each other. Most of the episodes are them like socializing, ultimately. So yeah, in the Madoka kind of analog, we want to say, yeah, this is about like people as individuals going and like trying to find answers, right? Like Homura does this all the frickin' time, and a bunch of the other characters essentially do it as well, right? Like we can think of any scene where they're like following their soul gem around and having it lead them to witches. They're investigating, right? And so then a move that connects around being in darkness, so about getting +1 die to all rolls made while in darkness, and take -1 die when rolling Eclipse. So -1 die when rolling Eclipse means you're going to end up in darkness more often, but you're better at everything while in darkness. So this will encourage some like edgy brinksmanship play, which I think suits the series book pretty well. We'll see if this is like way too overpowered once people actually try using it. Because I have a feeling this will be pretty crazy powerful, but also like this is probably at most like 5 rolls and then you're fucking dead. So, you know, that's cool. And then while transcended, PCs gain +1 to conceal, defy, confess. Straight up makes sense, right? That's just the echo of our previous move that we have in there. And then I haven't written any more transcendent moves for this. So I gotta think of some crew abilities and some transcendent abilities for them. Um, and then we gotta talk about XP triggers, which are also really important. Um, and then I want to solve this like Doom pyramid idea. And I'm going to add to my notes here. So I think what appeals to me most at the moment, and like would be delighted to hear how y'all are thinking about this kind of thing, or if any of these make sense or not. But yeah, the idea here that I think is going to be best is like, I don't want to phrase this. I want this to be like in the player's hands predominantly. So they get to decide when they kind of like advance this badness pyramid to both give power and have costs, like NPC friends and such, right? Like I love the idea of like when we take this like, you know, hideout upgrade, when we unlock this box, like everyone gets something and one like friend NPC dies or like falls to darkness, right? That we put costs that are not just like you get minus blah to rolls, like that the costs be fictional, costs in the fiction, and that the power like might be predominantly power in mechanics at the cost of like things that we want out of the fiction. Predominantly in this case, I am weaseling a bit. Fubar Basilisk. This is like, I'm still not 100% certain on this one, because I think it could be interesting to have spaces where the MC can advance these. And I'm interested in exploring ways that these could be so that we could use these like as kind of like a bigger, like broad, like crew level dark bargain, right? Like in the moments in missions, like we offer Devil's Bargains and Blades, or Dark Bargains in Girl by Moonlight, as these kind of like very personal, usually very personal demons coming up for people, right? That like, I'm going to do this thing that's about like your specific NPC, or this thing that I know is going on with your character, right? Like with Elle's character in our Blades game, I was just like, yeah, this like almost every Devil's Bargain I offered Thorn was related to Sitara in some way, or to her cult. And so having this pyramid thing be like a dark bargain that the crew as a whole gets offered, and that impacts kind of more broadly, I think has some merit. So that at least like some of the time we might put that out there. I'm not saying like this is I don't want this to be the only way that this advances. I really like the idea of the players collectively like taking this into their hands and being like, yeah, we're gonna make things more fucked up, but to like get power. And I think these could even have like limited or one-use payouts. And actually, I'm really keen on this idea. So this notion is to say, yeah, cool. So I noticed that the crew is all like super stressed out after this last mission where y'all like failed the mission, and everyone is like, There are some people like in darkness. There are some people who are like really high on stress. What if one of these was just like everyone like is able to clear all of their stress and recover all of their transcendence actions, but like 2 NPCs die, or well, I don't think it would be die. I think it would be more like fall to darkness, right? And like we have one of those on the sheet, and we don't get it a second time, right? Like you check that box and it's done. And that, or maybe you have like 2 of them, right? Like this is one and this is one. But then once that's depleted, right, you can't keep going there. You got to go to the next thing. And that these will be variously severe, but also reward increasing value. And that we might gate it like you have to do all the bottom level stuff before you can do the second level stuff. And so that the game has a prescriptive way of pushing the story into this kind of like critical breaking point. Because I feel like that's essential to the kinds of fiction that we're trying to replicate here. And I think it's totally fair to say that like this series book might not be designed to go longer than a season, or it might be very rare that it would go longer than a season. That we would essentially play towards this tragic end, and then like that would be it. It would have burnt out and run its course, and we tear the sheets up and throw them away and into the fire, and we're done, and it's over. And for that to be okay, right? For us to look at these characters, in Avery's famous words, to drive them like stolen cars. Not just the NPCs in the game, but the PCs themselves, to give everyone an opportunity to have that experience of just like recklessly and boldly diving in and messing around with stuff. So I like this idea of like limited or one-use payouts, where it's just like you get this thing just one time, but the cost is permanent. Right, and these are like the wishes in Madoka, which like now that I say that is super obvious. Like that's super crystal fucking obvious that that's what's going on with those, right? But that they're irrevocable, and like totally bad deals. Yeah, and like to keep the payouts really valuable or needed, but to have the costs be really, really severe. And kind of like unrelated, right? So it's like, yeah, I just need this thing, and taking it isn't going to fuck with this thing. It's going to fuck with something over here, which I'm inclined to like not think about right now, but that will come back later and be really like brutal emotionally. And yeah, exactly. So Arthur says, so maybe not just characters, but like important objects or locations the characters frequent can become corrupted, destroyed, lost, inaccessible, something like that. Yeah. That's very much in line with what I'm thinking. That these will be, yeah, I like this, that they're irrevocable. I didn't spell irrevocable correctly, but I just don't even care. Right, but like the wishes are perfect examples of these. And that trope like exists in other kinds of fiction too. Like I remember vaguely there was like a Never-Ending Story sequel where this kid could like had a ring or whatever, like he had like access to a bunch of wishes, but there was a finite quantity of them, and that once he used them all up, like his soul was gone or some crap. Like stuff like that is great. Those are wonderful kind of Sword of Damocles tropes in fiction. So yeah, the idea of like taking dark bargains and putting them at a crew level, I think has some merit for sure. And that these later ones are going to be like someone dies, like someone's character dies, will be the costs. I think they need to they needs to be tangible and happen now. Right? Even if it's like its full importance won't be felt right away, that it's just like it's not preventable, you can't get ahead of it. You know, you can't like change circumstances so that it never comes to be. It has to just be this like clear, tangible thing that is bad that happens. And then I'm definitely down for... Okay, so to step back slightly, the way I'm looking at series playbooks that aren't the Starlit Kingdom is that they're like mods for the game, right? This is a really important mindset for us all to have in our heads here, right? That these are like when you're playing like back in the day when you would play Unreal Tournament and you could like turn the gravity down, right? Like that we want to be able to have these kind of dials to turn or these spectra to adjust along, and that this is going to be like a internalized within the game like self-hack thing where we twist the game and make it about something else. And so these things, like especially this one here, right, this is like a mod to the base rules of the game. So right, so when you complete a mission, do not clear stress. We make some kind of roll, there's kind of like a fortune roll or something about like how much resource we get, and then we have to divide it up between the characters, with maybe very specific missions that give you full clear or something like that. Yeah, these could like bar certain... I don't like the idea of the cost being mechanical, right? Like we can't social link anymore. I don't think those are that interesting, right? Because it robs us of tools. I like putting us in a situation where we have lots of mechanics so that we can come up with interesting solutions, right? We still have as players, we have a full toolkit, but that we just present harder challenges within the fiction is kind of what I'm veering towards. So I like the idea of this. This I think is very, very important, that they have costs in the fiction. I'm just going to like bold this. This is critical shit right here. That we give like temporal power in exchange for bad stuff happening. I don't know how to spell irrevocable. It makes me sad. Oh, like we mod the, would they enjoy this part of social linking? I mean, I feel like we can make the fiction change people's answers to those questions, right? Because so when you social link, you're like, I'm going to do this thing with this character. Is this something that your character would enjoy? And if they say yes, then great, you get an extra die. If they say no, you don't. My like truest goal would be to have it so that there was this thing that a character enjoyed at the start of the series, and by midway through, it has been robbed of its joy, like in the fiction, and that the player themselves is like, I don't enjoy that anymore because of X, Y, and Z, right? Like that we not have a mechanic for trauma, but that we like trick players into inflicting it on themselves. Or on their characters, not themselves. I don't want to traumatize any of my players. I do want to traumatize their characters. Yeah, so I like this idea of using the fictional space of the game and driving all the badness home there. and having that be our mechanic, right? Like, it can be a mechanic that is only fiction facing, and we're still doing a good job as a game designer to back up our goals with our mechanics. If you don't want to traumatize players, don't tell them to watch Madoka then. I mean, yeah, kind of. It's not... I mean, it's real sad. Like, I cried, but it's not so terrible. And, like, yeah, it's really hard to break out of the mindset of the, like, ultra mechanistic, like, D&D vibes, right? Where it's just like, well, what I can do to these characters is, like, poison them or give them diseases or affect their hit points or take their stuff, and those are all just like things that only really, like, yes, there's a fictional element to all of those, but like their function isn't to generate fiction, right? Like, we don't necessarily inflict a disease on a character or like ability drain on them to then, like, see what it would be like for that character to play with, for you to, like, you don't have any charisma anymore. What happened to you, right? Like, how are you going to roleplay that? That's not what D&D is about. It's a way that you can be like, you're worse at resisting, like, your charisma save got worse, is the more notable consequence of me reducing your charisma. Not that you're playing your character differently, right? That you embody your character differently. And so... if we have our move want to, right, like, our thing that we're doing here is about manifesting fictional change directly, it's still a mechanism because we're still giving the player a choice. They have these bits laid out before them, and they're choosing things, and they're getting some payout, and then we know that and it's driving the fiction forward. What is a charisma save even used for? Charm effects? No, it's a wisdom save. I don't know. I don't know what would force a charisma save. I feel like I've done it before in games, but I can't remember. Oh, Sith Master, I like that. So that 4... Oh. Okay, no, that's fucking brilliant. Okay. Okay. That's a really cool idea, right? So, like, when you make the social link move, instead of would you enjoy this, ask, right? So we have a different question that then gets us an extra die. And and this has to be, right, like, does this make you feel worse? Right? Like, does this drive you closer to the brink of despair, right? Like, it has to just be some awful thing. And so the characters go and hang out with each other because they think that they wanted, like, that the people will like this thing. But at a player level, we're, like, actually motivated to be shitty to each other in really subtle ways, right? Like how the, like, shit kid friend wants to hang out with Sayaka and talk to her about how she's gonna ask Sayaka's crush, whom she just made a wish to save, like, to make it so that the dude could play the violin again and, like, use his body. That guy, you know, for whom she has taken on a life of, like, suffering and soon death, just to do something nice for this person, right? And where she's having all these complicated feelings about, like, did I do this for them or did I do it for me? And then this shitty kid rolls up and is like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I'm talking to you about how I want to ask this person out and about how, like, I'm giving you the first chance to do it. So go and talk to them. Otherwise, I'm going to do it. Right? Like, her friend is actually mostly doing the right thing, except that she's not really talking to Sayaka about how Sayaka feels, but she's at least giving her like a chance to follow through on her feelings, etc. Right? Like, you can see how it's that character wanting to do the right thing, but that the like confluence of all of the other circumstances that are unknown to her around that question is just amazing, because Sayaka has that whole thing where she like does not feel worthy of being with this person, does not want to like subject him to interactions with her and stuff, like this weird fucked up if we could have mechanics that push people towards that, yes, please, right? That's so good. And so what is the question that we ask of the other player? Right? What are we trying to get a yes answer to get our extra die? If so, take +1 die. Right? And this one is weird in terms of like the mechanical outcomes for doing this thing, but I want to try writing this move differently and see if we can do it. Logine, this is the bad one. This is the like dark, tragic, awful series playbook. So that's why we're twisting the game into being this awful thing. Right? And so that in this series we hang out with people still. We still want to get social links. Oh shit. No, I've got it. Oh, it's good. I mean, this might go into the base game even. Here's what it is. If you do it in a way that you know the character will actually like, or that you think the character will actually like, right? If your goal is to do that, then cool. They get the social links on their sheet. But if not, you get an extra die and you just write links on your sheet. So we can go back to a more selfish Monster Hearts style model, right? Where it's about getting power for me, not giving you power. Or we can play it to give you power. So I like the idea of like pivoting the move's direction in this series playbook specifically. Ask. And so this is this is in addition to would you enjoy this? Ask. And we need to give this a question mark and put it in quotes. Yeah, so let's see if we can write this. So it's either would you enjoy this or does this push you right? So we have this like other option of like, is this like this ironic moment, right, where we hang out? So another good example of this is the Kyoko Sayaka interaction, where Kyoko tells her story to Sayaka, and she's trying to do it to like liberate Sayaka from this feeling of needing to do things for other people. And she's like genuinely trying to do a nice thing for Sayaka. But all it actually accomplishes is like makes Sayaka double down on her whole thing of like, I will never be like you, I will never, right? Like those kinds of scenes are really, really powerful in this type of story. And so I like the idea of having an option to like have it go both ways here. So thank you so much for that suggestion, Sithmaster. This idea of like modifying these questions within the move, because I think that's a really nice place to drift the game, right? So, right, and these can, and as you say, right, these can come up, like Sithmaster is saying, in that interaction of trying to get someone out of darkness and it failing horribly, right? It then is one of these again, where we would say, like, would you enjoy this? And they're like, no. In fact, this pushes me into despair and sadness, right? Like, yeah, that's cool. So now we need to establish what happens. So if they enjoy it, gain +1 die, and if it drives, we should put this as drives. Drives you to despair and sadness. Right, so the direction of it changes. Right, so like we feel like we've done a good thing, but we know that we haven't. I almost want to make this cause them like 1 stress or something. Have there be some kind of other cost, but then it's like I'm inflicting shit on your character, which is not ideal. So here it is, right? We still lose a die, but we get the links on our sheet. I think maybe the losing a die is too much disincentivizing of this. I'm on the fence. I'm going to leave it like this, but I feel like this part could go. This part could very easily go away, and it would still be a rad move. So we're just going to put that in the caution tape. All right, so these are some of our different moves here. So we changed how friendship works, right, and how social links are gained a little bit. I'd like to define this one here. So when you complete a mission, do not clear stress as normal. Instead, because we can frame these as being a step outside of the regular rules of the game. So I can do like, don't do what you would normally do. Instead, do this. Instead, roll and okay, so instead, roll the missions tier. So we're going to roll the missions tier. So we're going to have the like standard spread of like a 1 to 3 result, a 4 to 5 result, and a 6+ result, or well, a 6 result and a crit result, all of which will like set the amount of stuff Um, and so I think what this could be is like trying to think of like the gradation here. So we could go 3, 6, 9 in terms of the amount of stress you clear, right? So if you get a 6, then great, yeah, everyone clears as normal. If you get a 4 or 5, you clear 6, which is a little more than half your stress. And if you get a 1 to 3, you only clear 3 stress. That is an incredibly wide band of possibility given what we expect in the base game. And is, like, it's very severe already. But, I don't know, let's try it, right? I can't know how that's going to play. Roll the missions tier. Period. And that there's also the potential for the crit to be rolled, and the crit needs to do some cool thing. On a 6, all crew members clear stress as normal. All right, so all of it clears except if you're in darkness, in which case it doesn't. Boom, bam, bing. On a 4/5. I don't think I want to have these commas here. I think they're just... Actually, I want to do this. On a 6, on a 4 or 5. So here we're going to clear 6 stress. On a 1 to 3, clear 3 stress. Right, so this is already answered this question of like, do some missions give you a full clear? It's just more likely if you do higher tier missions. On a crit, what happens on a crit? So Transcendence is still going to reset as normal. Okay, so here's the thing also, yeah. Do not clear stress and Transcendence as normal. Instead, roll the missions tier, and then it's clear 6 stress, clear all Transcendence. I'm just going to reduce the size of this for now. Right, clear all Transcendence. Oops. This needs to live up here. And then something amazing needs to happen on a crit. I kind of want to give everyone links on a crit. Start the next downtime with right, but like, does that actually follow naturally? If we're still looking at this through the Madoka lens, right? Like, the idea is that they would have... Yeah, I feel like maybe extra downtime is good. Like, you create more space for yourself. It's either that or everyone getting to have like 2 links with one other PC. Links are very flexible as well, is the thing, right? So, and links would more directly align with these things. The other thing we can do is you get a recovery. This is the thing. Yeah. Also, fill 4 segments on your recovery clock. Right, so that we clear stress and transcendence on a 6. On a crit, we move our harm down 1 step as well. Yeah, I can see how giving links actually takes away from the game because we want to see how that happens. And they're expressly not about like fighty stuff. Yeah. Like I totally agree with what y'all are saying. I think that's a really strong point. Yeah, I think harm recovery makes the most sense because we keep it just all in the same vein of like the crew's tangible personal resources. Right, and so this basically just gives them one swing around on the recovery clock. It's a little bit better for the character that has a three slice recovery clock. And this is extremely rare, right? Like this can only happen on a tier 2 or tier 3 mission. And well, I mean, we should give them a move that interacts with this, actually. Now that we have this mechanic, this series playbook can have a move that interacts with it, if we want to do that. In fact, right? Like, this is great. This actually, this decision then informs another move. So, right, gain +1 die to Fallout rolls. And stuff, right? And so this is essentially an additional Fallout roll. So gain +1 D to Fallout rolls, and mission tier rolls. Right, we want to keep this kind of like generic, like it might apply to some of the other playbooks. So having it apply to Fallout rolls as well as mission tier rolls. I'm trying to think of like other places where we roll stuff like that we might want to bundle into this. And we could do it the +1 die style. We could do it the roll 2 and keep the result you want. I mean, something like this. We can come back to it, but there's a space for this move, I think, is valid. And this feels good. It's like kind of brutal, but follows nicely from our source material. It pushes that like more intense pressure that we want on the PCs, and it makes us more likely to push the players into wanting to take these options from this bad times pyramid. And so I kind of just want to put Doom in this bottom square here, but whatever. So I feel like that's a reasonable mechanic there, and that this social link twist I think is great. Let me just expand this text box so we actually see the whole rule. I think this is a nice addition to like be like just as a statement of like friendship is more delicate and fraught in this series book. Right? Bye, Alex. Thanks for tuning in. And the other thing is that, like, a bunch of these can live over here. Because we have this big space on the crew sheet, which I want to reserve for, like, putting in some project clocks and stuff like that as well, but I think it makes sense to have it be a little place for, like, special series rules to live, and we just fill it in like that. I was hoping I'd be able to fit them all kind of around here, but I think that's not actually... Actually, I say that, but we might be able to fit this all in around our Pyramid of Badness, because we've got a fair bit of space here. So we can do, like, special series rules as a little header here, and have, like, an explanation of these few changes plus something that explains the pyramid kind of tucked away in here. I had this idea of it being a pyramid. We might change how this is laid out, because this could just as easily be like a triangle like this. We could draw this like this and have essentially the same result where we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, and just do it that way. Or we would gradate it differently. It would be here it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, right, and then 1, 2, and then 1. So we could arrange it like this as well, if we wanted to, and then have like a more unified block of space, because at the moment, right, it's split into these two little tiny triangles. So we're going to play around with the layout of this thing, but that's fine. For now, we're still good. Yeah, so the Pyramid of Badness replaces the hideout for this series book. So, next thing to do is to write some of our like Doom Pyramid contents. So I really like the idea of like clear all stress, kill an NPC, stress or harm, kill an NPC. That seems like a good one. Or not kill. I keep saying kill, but really like a friend falls to darkness. Because the like friends and frenemies bit is like basically like it lives on any given character's sheet, but it's kind of a crew-wide resource of like having friends. Or at least that's how I have ended up running it. And so yeah, I feel like it's fair to include these in there, and like someone in the crew can volunteer their NPC to die, right? If no one can agree, then they're not allowed to take this move or this like bonus. I like having one around like pull a character out of darkness, someone else falls. So like NPC falls. And I think we can split the consequences across the tiers. So like the low tier ones are going to be kind of analogous to a lot of the... And here, I already have like a tiered Fallout thing because I had to make one for the mission, the like post-mission stuff. Where the fuck does it live on my rulebook, which is terribly organized? Here we go. So So in tier 1 of Fallout, we have a friend falls victim, a dark champion appears, a frenemy acts against you. These are all pretty soft. A frenemy is elevated by darkness. A friend is in peril, a dark champion acts is tier 2, and then a dark champion acts, a dark manifestation, a friend succumbs to darkness is tier 3. So a friend succumbing to darkness is like super severe in the like base game. And so this is a pretty big cost. I think it makes the most sense to have the cost for pulling a character out of darkness be that someone else falls, and that for clearing all stress and harm is that an enemy is elevated. Right, so that one of our kind of mundane NPC frenemies becomes like a legit bad thing that we have to deal with. Maybe people have loud motorcycles outside. Yeah, the other thing we could do is like flip this upside down, and it might actually read better. Weirdly, like there's a lot of stuff here that's about just like layout and design stuff that I'm not an expert at. But there will probably be better ways to present this pyramid. I might also just like scale it down a little bit. I like these being 1-for-1 as well. This one is like everyone recovers all stress and harm was my original visioning of it, but maybe it's like just one person and then one enemy gets elevated. And then, yeah, I like the idea of tying these together, right? So if we get brought up, if like good stuff happens for us, then good stuff happens for a baddie. If we pull someone out of darkness, then someone, like, you know, the whole like zero-sum game angle needs to exist here, right? So an NPC falls. I think our worst thing, our like top of the pyramid, could be the like the big self-sacrifice. It's definitely an option, right? Like do a Madoka and save everyone. You are torn from existence. Right? Like, this could be a thing as the, like, T3, right? And I'm thinking of these as T1s. And these don't all have to be different. I could see it being, like, both are available on each side. So it's like, if we call this like tier 1 1 and tier 1 2, then it could be like tier 1 1, tier 1 2, tier 1 2, tier 1 1, something like that. And yeah, I like the idea of that we move up the pyramid. So we get the baseline, and then we move up, and then we move up. We haven't done like a deep explanation of exactly how to go through the pyramid yet, because we haven't really, I haven't figured that out, basically. So yeah, I like that it contains duplicates. So that maybe all of our tier 1 stuff is just these. And then that we escalate in tier 2. And this could be like broader reach stuff. This could engage with the fiction on a bigger level. Right, yeah, and like all of these are meant to be difficult choices. So we want the cost to feel really gross and severe. Right, and we have an agenda for the darkness too, is the other thing to remember, right? So I think these tier 2 ones should explicitly advance the darkness's agenda. Now we don't get to know beforehand what that is, but I can just say like blah blah blah. advance the darkness's agenda. Right, so that we get some like tangible in fiction big bad thing occurs, which can mean things like a bunch of people get their emotions harvested and are reduced to husks, or a bunch of people are disappeared and eaten, and maybe that includes some of our NPCs, right? And then to secretly replace us, we're gonna have some NPCs or other important characters get replaced. To tear down our civilization, to poison our hearts, to drive us all to madness and despair, right? That, like, the MC makes a big move relating to that. I think another fun tier 2 consequence would be something like, right, like someone betrays crew. So we get this thing, but it comes at this cost, right, of someone betraying us. Someone within the crew betrays us. Right? And again, we decide who, and we can't choose this if no one is going to volunteer to do it. I mean, if people weren't excited about picking these things, they wouldn't be playing this playbook. is what I will put forward. Like, yes, there is a balancing act of not making them too bad, but this is a series playbook for masochists, right? This is for bad kids who want to do bad things, which, by the way, it's fun to do bad things. And yeah, Kami-sama, that is kind of what I'm thinking here, right? Is having this idea of an escalation. Because what Kami-sama says is like, tier 1 is like introducing bad things. Tier 2 is like things getting worse or like exacerbating established problems. And then tier 3 is all doom, right? All is doom. Right? The idea that we have an escalation of circumstances for all of these, I think, is very important. Right, and so advance the darkness's agenda. You know, this is equivalent to us having like failed a mission, or right, like this is going to be like a very big thing. Someone within the crew betrays us, I feel like, is a really big bad thing as well. And like how this manifests is very ambiguous, though, and I think we need to detail this out a little bit. But I like this idea. I'm just not sure exactly how to execute it. And yeah, I'm not sure what we are paying for with that. And that the interesting thing with these, like the reason I think that these work so nicely, right, is that they address like an established, clear, like thing that I can see on my sheet, you know, like that I have a lot of stress or harm, or that my character is in darkness. Like these are very clear things. And for the other ones, I'm kind of trying to envision, like, what other stuff would I want to buy, right? Like, what would I be willing to pay a cost for? I feel like this one can be everyone, like, each crew member gets an advance. crew, and each of its members get an advance. Someone within the crew betrays us, right? So we make this like, we like have this gaining of power, right? Because what I can offer them is advancement is a mechanical thing that I can dole out. So like we get a crew advance and a playbook advance for each crew member. And someone within the crew betraying us, what does that mean? Right? Like the crew grows in power, but then also the crew like subverts itself and is its own undoing. Like I feel like to me this means that we have to like go on a bad mission, or that we end up in some like terrible circumstance, right? That we wouldn't otherwise want to be. But I want to, because, and then now, yeah, my inclination is to be like, cool, so like some crunchy bits, right? Like the kind of mission you have to go on, you get you automatically fail your engagement roll or whatever. But is that compelling enough? What does that mean for our fiction, right? Like I would like for it to at least, if it's going to include those mechanical bits, I would like for there to be a clear fictional next step, right? Like someone betrays us within the crew. Is that like, I feel like that must mean that the darkness finds us, and that is kind of a fictional push. And this is like immediately run, strike at the heart of darkness with failed engagement. Right? This is just like the darkness has found us. Similarly to how in the Starlit Kingdom default version, when darkness hunts us fills, we immediately do a strike at the heart of darkness on a failed engagement roll. Right, which is essentially what we're doing. We're just giving it like a free mission against us that we have to then deal with. Which I feel like is kind of a fair trade-off. And that we have, like, this is a fictional bit, right? We have to figure out who betrays us and why and how they do it. And then there is a further mechanical consequence that must follow from this happening, but this is like a two-step thing, right? Where it's like, this crunchy bit triggers this thing in fiction, and if this thing in fiction has happened, then it must mean this, right? And the similar to the whole like, if you want to do it, and to do it if you did it, then do it thing from Apocalypse World, where it's like, you're never just like, I go aggro. It's like, I put my gun to his head and I threaten him. I'm just like, yeah, you got to give me that thing or I'm going to shoot you. And then we're like, cool, yeah, so therefore you did it. And if I have put my gun to his head and been like, I'm going to fucking shoot you, I can't then be like, I'm not going aggro, right? Like, sometimes the fiction drives the mechanics forward as well. But that I want specifically to have it be about betrayal, because we have already loaded ourselves with this expectation, right, of someone is an agent of darkness, someone is an unwitting traitor. And this one about advance the darkness's agenda this is just like, we pretend that the crew like has been sitting on their heels for a long time and that a bunch of shit just happens, which is super bad. And no one's going to like this happening. No one's going to like this at all. So there will be like 2 of this one, as I'm picturing it. So to envision this layout, right, this is like the tier 1 things. There's one of each on each side, right and left. So it's 1, 2, and 2, 1. And then on the second tier, I would want to have 2 of the one that advances the darkness's agenda and 1 of this one. And the betrayal one happens right here. This is where the betrayal happens. And then that there would be 2 of the other one where we advance the darkness's agenda. Oh, something like permanently biasing ourselves towards harder shit. Like we can only ever reset down to like tier 1. It's definitely interesting. I kind of like that as a... Here's what I'll say. I like that idea a lot, but I like that as a crew ability. So it's like permanently fill in the first 5 pips of darkness that hunts. Gain blah. Right, so this like super edgy thing where it's like, yeah, they always kind of know where we're at. It's harder for us to hide from them, but we have this other advantage. I think is very cool. And the reason I want to put that there is that I want that to be available to the whole length and breadth of the game. Because yeah, I think that's a really interesting price to pay. And it reminds me of moves like the wanted level being used as turf thing in Blades, which I think is really rad. Like, I think those kinds of things where it's like, yeah, just like, let's turn this bad thing into a good thing, but like it's still also a bad thing. Let's have this thing just simultaneously be both bad and good to encourage you to like have this fucking mess on your hands at all times. I think is great. And then yeah, to have the tier 3 thing. And so it's kind of like, if we can survive activating all this other stuff, or like earning all of this other stuff, then we can get the chance to have someone like Polamatica, maybe. Yeah, I was thinking maybe that this new move we just came up with might also interact with investigation in some way. I'm not quite sure what I want the consequence of this to be. I know that I like this idea a lot. I think just shortening these tracks both isn't quite enough. Just because of how investigation works too, where we like... It fucks with the math on investigation to a certain extent, because like, say we get up to 8 on this track, and we run a mission. We then lose half, so we go back down to 4, and then we keep progressing. If we bottom out at 5, then it's like, cool, I'm at 6, 7, 8, or 9. I just bottom out at this. But then, if I'm at anything past 10, if I'm in this area and run a mission, this essentially does nothing for me, right? Bottoming this out at tier 1. So I'm not sure how valuable that is, based on how the mechanics for it work, which is not something I've drawn attention to, but that's how investigation works now. So, yeah. And so I view this whole, the next mission is the last thing as like, or sorry, I just really played my hand there. So this whole like pulling a Madoka thing as being like, yeah, the next mission is the last, or like when you run this tier 4 mission, someone can make it like possible for it to be won. Because probably we're going to have a like, there's like the custom move, right? For when you run a tier 4 mission, you can't win. And we just play to see how you die. Right? Because it would be literally impossible like the MC is just gonna be like, cool, I'm just gonna, so like, hey guys, we started this tier 4 mission and we all know that what this means is that I'm gonna throw stuff at you until you all die, and we're just in the spirit of play to find out what happens, right? We're gonna see what your last stand looks like as you all like heroically but like ultimately pointlessly throw yourselves at this thing, this big bad that we're gonna fight. Right, as you try to like arm wrestle the black hole, we get to see what that looks like. We get to see the characters in their last moments, in these like moments of struggle, and then we're gonna have an epilogue afterwards, and then the series is over, and that's how the game's gonna end. And this gives the option, if we've gotten there, of saying, okay, cool, now our story is, we're going to do that thing still. We're going to go into this mission, which should be impossible. And then at some point, this, you know, one of the characters is going to do a thing. And we're going to say, oh yeah, hey, that's the thing. Like, they're going to make this sacrifice and they are like, yeah, like torn from existence or whatever. And they make a different resolution possible. I'm toying with having this be a thing in the fiction. I also just kind of like the idea that it's just always going to end in this like fatalistic death opera of darkness and horror at the very end. So, question marks? And like these are the kind of things that I don't want to make a decision on today. Like I want to sit on it. I want to sit on this for a while and think about it, and mull it over, and come back to it when I've given it some thought and kind of formed a decision. But like, that can be the thing that this series book is about. I definitely really like the idea of the like, hey, we're going to do a mission that we know is going to kill all of us. Let's see what happens. I think that's really cool. And the whole purpose of this series playbook is to push people into those spaces and to make them be more comfortable with playing that kind of game. Because I think that's a very valuable thing, just generally. And if I may refer to my own stuff, if I were to say open the Unlikely Hero playbook and zoom in on my player agenda, there are a couple here that I would deem significant to this whole process. One is play to find out what happens. That's why we're here. What happens might be that we all die, and we should be equally invested in that as anything else. I would argue that this gives us an opportunity to reveal our character's inner world. That we see them in this like dark and worst moment, like this final despairing tragic end. We see that, we play it out. What does that mean for the characters? How do they respond, right? Like, go watch Madoka and you will see this one right here of revealing your character's inner world is going to happen in those moments. And then absolutely Hold On But Lightly. Like, so much this. Right? That, like, yeah, be invested in your character. Be open to the possibility that it's going to take a turn that you, like, wouldn't have expressly played towards, right? And what Hold On But Lightly really means, right, is, like, permit yourself to be surprised about what's going to happen, right? Don't be like, yeah, cool, we're going to play this game, but like none of our characters are going to die because we're being precious with them, right? Because then we already have limited ourselves in terms of the kinds of play that we can have. And you know, this one and this one, Keep Hope in Your Heart and Explore the Darkness, I think are totally relevant there as well, right? This idea of like, yeah, get your hands dirty, get messy, get into all this like bad shit. And then even amongst all of that, there can be a chance that things will be okay, right? That we can still have hope. and that we always need to play as if there is a chance, even when we as players know that there isn't, I think has value. Right? And yeah, like Logine is saying, the characters are important, but so is their story. And their story might even be more important. And these fucking dogs next door are not important to me. I wish my neighbors would not treat them poorly and cause them to bark like this. So, for all of this stuff, right, like, it's important to think about being a dispassionate author of fiction and of being a good collaborator and not being selfish. And often that means that, like, your character might not get, like, the ending you wanted or whatever, right? Like, but that we might, in so doing, in making concessions for the sake of a broader story, we might make something really wonderful together that everyone appreciates. Because I can, like, me doing only indulgent, like, Mary Sue shit for my character is only going to be indulgent and satisfyingly so for me. And everyone else is just going to be rolling their eyes and, like, sitting back. You know, like, I don't want to encourage that kind of play where we're overly precious with our little pieces. I want to encourage people to take dramatic moves with their pieces, right, with their characters, and to embrace the horrifying badness, and not, like, flinch from subjecting their characters to horrifying stuff in the pursuit of an interesting story. So, and that's just, and, like, again, this is all just one series playbook, right? Like, if you don't like this style, we got playbooks for you. You know, we got fucking we got In a Starlit Kingdom. Play that, right? This is the optimistic one, right? This is our early genre piece where things go well for the heroes and where we believe in the heroes in a completely pure and uncynical way. And then this playbook in Darkest Night is the revisionist genre piece, right? This is where we know that the promises of the genre aren't perfect, right? That there are some lies in there somewhere, and that it's not all going to be okay. Kami-sama, I gotta correct you on that one because Vincent didn't say that. Avery Alder, the maker of Monster Hearts, said to drive your characters around like stolen cars. And I think it's really important to credit her because she is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, she's a really important figure in this whole, like, design space. And it's like, right, like, it's a brilliant line. And yet Vincent's look at the world through crosshairs, right, is great for advice for, like, being an MC. And really for just, like, playing role-playing games in general, right? Like, don't accept status quos. Don't play into comfort. Push at the boundaries of your discomfort and explore that space. And it will be much more richly rewarding than hanging out in the rut you've been carving for the past however many years, playing D&D with your friends and having, like, your characters never die in a, you know, like, 4-year running campaign, right? Like, and yeah, Kami-sama, I'm not trying to, like, call you out. I just want to make sure that we don't miscredit people and misattribute people, especially when it puts us in a position where we're saying, yeah, a man said this when it was said by a woman. That's the only reason I, like, jumped on it so hard, is that I just want to make sure that folks get their due credit. But yeah, this whole thing about, like, status quos and comfortable ruts that we have, this playbook is, or this series book is definitely about, like, pushing people out of those. And I'm not cruel, right? It's not like, I'm not like, push yourself out of these comfort spaces and play this in a long format. This is a short, fiery, you know, train wreck and you play it, and it's over relatively quickly, and you hopefully get a satisfying experience out of that, and you know it's coming, right? Like, if you go through this list, you are not only consenting to that experience, but you are the author of it, right? Like, any suffering you experience is of your own making. So in this space here, right, like, this is what we're here for. This is what we're all here for. And if we're not here for that, we shouldn't be playing this. And I encourage you to set those boundaries if that's not something you're interested in. But I also encourage you to, like, to embrace your gaming kink and get in here and, like, torment your characters and do a bunch of messed up stuff. And that's what I'm trying to design towards here. And so, because I see Ash in chat, I think this means that it is time for the two of us to embark on our little streaming journey for this evening. And I am kind of doing my closing remarks for this design stream anyways, so seems like an appropriate time. I want to take a quick break between this and what comes next, which is me and Ash playing Armello, which is a, like, kind of digital board game, basically, which I have just gone through, like, the tutorial for, so I'm not, like, I can't give you, like, the full spiel of exactly what its deal is. But I'm going to be learning that with Ash, and we're going to, like, chat and hang out. And so come watch that if you want to. If you're not interested in watching that, that's fine too. I'll be doing more of this design stuff next week, and just kind of on an ongoing basis. I'm getting back into, like, just churning out as much stuff as I can following GoPlay. I'm going to be continuing my playtest game of Girl by Moonlight on Distracted Elf's channel on Monday nights, this coming Monday. So tune in if you want to see all this stuff in action. If you want to playtest the game, I'm just going to drop a shared link for my rulebook, or, well, playtest document, I should say, in the chat right now. These will start to live in the video descriptions on YouTube as well. And so thank you all for checking it out. If you want to support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, all that kind of stuff, you can go to my Twitter @CommutingCrow and find links to all my various internet places. And for those of you that are sticking around, it's going to be like a 5-minute break, maybe 10-minute break, and then we'll move into playing some Armello. So thanks for tuning in. Bye, everyone.